I think I can see 3 people and 4 people.
Yeah.
You're over on the corner. I know that.
Yeah, I expect maybe 1 or 2 more. And Heidi, who's in the corner over there, did you see her wave her hand, or was she off screen?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Has suggested that if this is too small an audience for you, we can reschedule. I'm trying to be nice.
Oh, I appreciate that. No, it's
Or we cut it short.
It's 5 more people than I have in the office with me right now. So let's.
I want you to know. Just as a matter of trivia, could I ask you to simply clap once so I can get a sound sync?
Oh, sure.
With the camera and thank you. One more time. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, there's about a 1 second delay between when you clap and when we see you clap, and I'll fix that in the recording. Anyway,
okay.
I want you to know that there are some very dedicated people here. We have over here Greg, and you may or may not recognize him, who has come in by bus from Littleton just to hear you speak.
That's right.
Well, it's good to have you.
Thank you. And you know me, Senator Lundberg. I've been going to the Capitol to watch the proceedings of the House Representatives for the past 13 years. And I'd go to the State Affairs and watch their Nelson Education Zone and testify on legislation.
You.
Yep, great.
Yep.
You're one of my favorite legislators, so of all time.
And today you are definitely my favorite legislator. So you can talk about whatever you'd like, or we can shoot questions to you. Or
I'd like to just do a little Q&A. Let me give you a couple of brief moments of description as to where I'm at right now in the legislature. I'm starting my 15th year down here. That actually makes me the senior senator in the Senate because I'm starting my 9th year. I know we have 8-year term limits, but I came in mid-term or a few days short of that. And then I was in the House for 6 years prior to that. So got quite a bit of history down in this place and find myself, literally having been here longer than anybody else concurrently. Senator Jones from Boulder County was in the Senate a long time ago, and Senator Jean, she was in the House prior to myself, but then stepped out for a while. I'm on the Joint Budget Committee, which is a new adventure for me, and we have been meeting since the middle of November, so I feel like the session is about halfway done, and I think we start next Wednesday. So, just give you that as a brief background as to where I'm at right now.
Well, then I'll shoot you a question, which is,
sure.
Doesn't the Colorado Constitution prohibit the legislature being in session outside of the stated constitutional limits?
Actually, what the Constitution calls for, and when I say I feel like I've been in session, it's because the Joint Budget Committee has the responsibility of pulling the budget together, and we have to start in November, right after the governor presents his ideas on what the budget needs to be. So we've been holding hearings from all the departments and holding some staff briefings from our staff, and then we'll dive into supplementals in the next week or so that have to be done to kind of adjust the budget for this year. And then we'll go right back into putting the budget together so that by the 1st or the middle of April, we'll have this whole budget to present to the legislature so they can pass it. Now I'm getting back to your question. By the time the constitutional limit of the regular session ends, which is the session is 120 days in length, and that's when we have the responsibility to meet and come up with a budget and whatever else, but the budget is really the only real obligation we have, which includes school funding as well, which is a separate bill. But then we can be called into special session either by the governor or by a certain number of legislators calling for special session also. So we can go into a session any time of the year but only under those constraints.
And so so operating a budget committee outside of the 120 days, at least from your perspective, doesn't bend constitutional restraints.
No, and well, that's an interesting question that I've never had posed to me before, so I'm sort of processing this. There are other committees that will meet off session as well. We have interim committees. There is one committee that's a standing committee called the Executive Committee, and that's made up of the leadership from both the House and the Senate. And they, along with the Joint Budget Committee, have some prerogative to make decisions outside of session. And that's a practical reality, because something comes up and, budgetarily, JBC, Joint Budget Committee, can take some actions, and it's very much controlled, and it's written by statute. But it's so that when a question comes up that has to be answered now or has to be decided at this point in time, we don't have to always bring everybody back for a special session. In my, now completing 14 years, I think I've been in 2 special sessions. One was over the immigration issue, and the other one was because we had a real blow-up in the legislature at the end of the session, and there's certain bills got killed, and we had to get them fixed. Some water bills and some other things. So,
do you get paid during these out of session sessions?
We get a per diem of, that's what they call it, a per diem. Technically, it's a part of our actual salary. Back up a little bit. The salary for a state legislator is $30,000 a year, and that is paid on a monthly basis, but essentially you do your work during the 4 months of the year that the 120 days you're in there. You do get a per diem for any committee meeting that you attend outside of session, and that is, $99 plus expenses, meaning a mileage fee, or if it's somebody from the other part of the state and they have to take a hotel or something like that. And I think they also offer a per diem for meals for the day, but I've never done that. So, and in full disclosure, during the session, there's a per diem that's afforded to legislators at 2 different rates. One is for the Metro District legislators, which is a fairly minimal amount. I don't even know where it's at, because I'm in the outside Metro, which is much more generous. It's like $180 a day, I believe it is. So that's, you asked about payment. That's kind of the full load there.
Bill, and can you see Bill?
Let's see, do I need to push the button?
Not quite.
Yes, please.
There we are.
So,
Can you hear Bill?
Yeah. Hello.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. There's a chance that we're going to have the national government repeal Obamacare this year, and I understand I was surprised at the hospital provider fee /tax, and that it was secret on the bills, and understand that you ran a bill once upon a time to try to not make that fee a secret anymore on hospital bills, but that the hospitals came back and said no, they like the slush fund, and don't you be daring taking that make us reveal that we're charging the hospital provider fee. So I'd like to see if that story I heard that you were pressured by the Chamber of Commerce to go ahead and leave that alone and let it stay secret. And then on the bigger question is, if we do get a repeal of Obamacare, what do you see as being that you can do in Colorado to also free us up?
Okay, how many hours do we have to discuss this?
As long as you'd like, sir.
Kind of take part piece by piece, and if I miss something, kind of fill it back in. So I hang on to the mic there.
All right.
The first part that I want to react to is the let's see. There's several elements here. One is the prospect of Obamacare being repealed at the federal level. Yeah, we're all hoping and hanging on to just what that means. The most viable suggestion I heard was that they would put some sort of a hold on Obamacare for a couple of years, and that Trump would have it on his desk January 20th, so he could literally sign it as the first thing. Now, what does a hold mean? Because there are a lot of moving parts when it comes to Obamacare, and a lot of things that are already in place that it can't go away just at the stroke of a pen. I'm hoping that what they will have is something that will eliminate the individual mandates, so there will be no tax penalties on people who didn't comply, and that they will open up the possibility of medical insurance not conforming to all of the Obamacare standards. Now, there's another corollary question to that, and that is, what about the exchanges? What's going to happen there? That will probably be a state-specific thing, and I won't go any further except to say that I've been having some discussions with others here that we need to do something about that. And I'm the guy who has been from the very outset of this, and I've been on the committee that has oversight of the exchange here in Colorado. I've been saying this is a program that's going to blow up. It's not going to work. It's not functional. And so there will be changes, but where and at what speed, I don't know. So, it's a long way to say I don't know about that part. Now, hospital provider fee. That is a mechanism that the hospitals use to draw down more federal funds. It's kind of this gimmick where the hospitals are charged a fee. See, these are quotation marks.
Thank you.
And they collect that money, send it to the state, who then turns to the federal government and says, "Oh, look, the hospitals have given us $300 million. Now you need to match that with another 300, which the feds have been doing," and so they end up with this 600 million, and roughly that's about the ballpark we've been in. That they then redistribute to the hospitals, but not according to how much money they gave them, but according to how many Medicaid patients they've had in their system. And so it's this redistribution mechanism that helps pay for Medicaid, which is often funded at a level below what the hospitals think it costs. I didn't say what it costs. I said what they think it costs. And so, yeah, I have consistently voted against the hospital provider fee because I think it's a federal gimmick. Now, let me put another layer to this. I'm almost certain that one of the things they're going to do to help to get rid of, another quotation mark, get rid of Obamacare, and that's to simply say, well, are they going to really or not? But I hope one of those elements is that they get rid of all these extra financial gimmicks that they play, like the provider fee. Some states do it, some states don't, and I think it's kind of immoral that there's this inequity as well as immoral this kind of, matching system gimmick they have. There was another part of the question that you said something about the Chamber of Commerce pressured me to do something. They've never pressured me to do anything. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Oh yeah, no, the story I heard was, I was so shocked when I found out it was a secret that the hospital provider fee couldn't be put on the bills. And so I ran as a Libertarian.
Oh, yeah.
That was my main campaign thing. And of course nobody believed that it was actually true, which was a kind of an interesting experience for me. And then, but as I researched that and was talking to people, somebody told me that you had actually once upon a time tried to keep that from being a secret, and so that would actually show up on the bills, and that the hospital pressured you to go ahead and let it stay as a secret. And I'm just trying to get a confirmation on
Okay, I do vaguely remember, I don't remember specifically, but I vaguely remember one of my concerns was that it's buried in the billing system for the hospital because, it comes out of somebody's pocket. And I know that when the hospitals were provided or were initially given this fee, like any business, if you're given a fee, what do? You pass it on into your costs. And the fee is substantial. To rack up this several $100 million, statewide, it boils down to like a couple $100 a day per bed. So you go into the hospital today and they say, well, we're going to charge you, $2,200 a night. Well, guess what? $200 of that is the provider fee, but no, they wouldn't make that a part of it because they really wanted to kind of fold it in as if it never occurred. And they could sort of argue that it doesn't if they get the money back eventually. But remember, it doesn't come back to the hospital that gave the money necessarily. Most hospitals do make money on the hospital provider fee. A very few, however, send more money in than they get back, and they're willing to go along with that because they have a richer clientele and fewer are on Medicaid. But it's one of those gimmicks that just bugs the daylights out of me. And so, okay, back to did somebody pressure me? No, but I may have had some conversations and not moved forward, realizing it wasn't going to go anywhere. But let me tack onto that a bill that I am running this year, and that's a bill to try to force some transparency or some transparency in hospital and other medical services costs. It would be a bill to require them, hospitals, clinics, doctors, to post what their actual fee is. Now, or cost, charge to the patient. Unfortunately, that's not a single number, and all we're putting in the bill is what's your retail price. Every insurance company has kind of cut a deal with all these folks, so it's either a little bit less, or in the case of lab tests. Generally, if you look at what they claim is their retail price and what is the actual cost that the insurance company pays, it's somewhere between 5 and 10% of the retail price, which is just, outrageous. Here's the bottom line when it comes to medical costs. Because we have a third-party payer system, because somebody else is paying the bill rather than you, the patient, it has become completely unrealistic or irrelevant almost to what the cost is. And so we have this, this madness of galloping expenses, and it's mostly because the free market isn't in place to really force this further down the road. Now, add this one final element. I'm looking at another bill. I don't know if I'll run it because I'm talking to a House member who may or may not be interested in starting it. That would require transparency plus, it's called the Right to Shop bill. And what it does is it tells the patient that if you're given the doctor says, go get an MRI, and so they schedule you at the local hospital, and the hospital says, and you call them and say, what's the price? And they tell you it's $2,500, but if you can find it for $1,000 elsewhere and save a $1,500 bill, this Right to Shop bill says you can split the difference of the cost savings with your insurance company, and it's meant to make people real consumers. Now, I do that personally myself. When my wife gets some doctor's orders, and unfortunately she gets too many of those, and they schedule her for something, I say, hey, go find a price, find out if that's the best price we can get. And we generally will find, a 50 to 100 to a 300% savings. I'm sorry for giving you such long answers.
Oh, no, that's great.
Let me thank you so much. That's I do appreciate the answers. They're very kind of thorough, and it makes me just want to say, okay, how can we help? So that's it. What can we do to help you with this right to shop?
Well,
I would love that.
And okay, let me give you one more element, and that is the whole. As I say, the fundamental problem is we've got a third-party payer system in here. And every opportunity I get now on the Joint Budget Committee, people listen a little more carefully because there are only 6 of us and we make the decisions on what's finally in the budget. So when the governor was before us talking about medical costs, I told him and his lieutenant governor, Donna Lynn, who is a former, she used to work with Kaiser, so she's really into this stuff. I said, because they always come up with these answers of, oh, we've got to subsidize it here, and we've got to make sure it's mandated there, and blah, 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 blah. And I said, it's not going to fix it. You're never going to fix it until you put the patient back in charge of the payment, and you make the doctor, because when you go to your doctor, 9 times out of 10, if you ask them, what does this cost, they don't know. And they will know if every patient says, but doc, what's that going to cost me? And perfect example of how this really does function is the LASIK eye surgery, where it isn't covered by insurance, and it has become cheaper and better. And instead, everything else has become just more and more and more expensive, sometimes better. I'm grateful for the medical care we have available, but I'm totally disgusted with the pricing system that we have in place.
Bill, any more?
I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a great answer.
And, I still want to know what we can do to help.
Well, you're starting by the right thing, and that is asking questions and interacting here. Do you guys get my legislative report?
I do. Somebody forwards it to me.
Okay, well, you can have it yourself for free. And I do not share my emails with anybody. I've made that a commitment from the beginning, and I can't change it because everybody expects it now. But if you go to my website, kevinlundberg.com, you can just give me your email address. Yeah, I ask for your name, address, phone number, all that stuff. But the only thing I really insist on is your email address, and you'll get our weekly announcements. Here's what we're going to do this year. We send out every week. We've been doing it in less frequent fashion off session, but during session, at least once a week, we're going to send out an email message, and it's not very long. We try to keep it, concise. One thing I'm starting this year is I'm calling it the Budget Buster of the Week. In other words, on Joint Budget Committee, I come across this all the time, where they're just wasting taxpayer dollars on stupid things. Like last week, it was a program they have where they require vehicles purchased by the state whenever possible to be alternative fuel vehicles. And they say at a cost of no more than 110% life cost of a standard vehicle. Well, I don't believe that they really work with the right numbers, but then 10% is not necessary, especially in today's world where peak oil is no longer even discussed because we know better. Anyway, they spend millions of dollars on changing vehicles over to compressed natural gas when they shouldn't. And so that was my budget buster last week. The one this week has to do with a charitable solicitation fraud unit that the Attorney General wants to put in place at the cost of about $350,000 every year. And I don't see a justification for them needing it. So it's stuff like that. Anyway, the reason I tack this on to what I'm talking about right now is that as I move through the process with the bills that I am introducing, you'll find out how you can help. I mean, we'll just say such and such bill is coming up. Call your legislator. Tell them you like the bill or you don't like the bill, or tell me one way or the other.
Sweet.
Are you open to suggestions about how to raise revenue that's relatively painless?
Oh, always. But
Then I'd like to make a suggestion.
No, sure.
Um,
Forgive me, you're eating and I'm going to too.
Please do.
oh, nice pizza.
Yeah.
There are large, there are humongous businesses, there are large businesses, there are medium-sized businesses, there are small businesses, and then there are people like me. There's one guy trying to make a living. And I used to sell software worldwide. And I would not sell software in Colorado. If you said, I live in Colorado, I wouldn't sell to you. And the reason is the cost of doing business, just the enormous paperwork involved with complying, with trying to collect the money, send it on. I would lose money on any sale. So, what I recommend is setting up a small business convenience tax where a small business like me would send the money to the state, say at 10%, higher than anywhere in the state, and the state collects it and then redistributes it back out to the taxing agents, the taxing authorities that it thinks deserve that money. You live in Boulder, Boulder gets so much, the states get so much, and this alleviates me from having to either buy a tax service or try to figure out what I owe Boulder. And it's hard. So that's just an easy way, I think.
I'd like to get in an argument with you, Ralph.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, wait. I want to be in this argument.
No, I'm also a software salesperson. I sell all over the world. It's very rare that I have a customer in Colorado, and that's true. But I'm not sure when you did it. The state of Colorado is now only requiring me to file something every 3 months, and the city of Longmont only makes me file once a year. And
But
the
what
paperwork has not been an issue.
what do you do when you sell? What do you do if you sell into Montrose? Do you have to go to you have to figure out what the Montrose sales tax is?
Okay, you're right. I haven't sold to Montrose. I've either sold in Boulder County or not in Colorado at all. I sell through through a web store, and the web store is off in some other state. So they do the purchase through the web store and generally don't get taxed. So,
Anyway, it's a suggestion to the honorable senator. By the way, you sound very honorable. Okay, that was a small chuckle.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just an idea that I pass on.
If I could respond to that, please.
No, I'm not going to let you.
With all due respect, I would never put the government in charge of the paperwork for reporting to the government, because they would grow that, and they would gladly take the 10%, and then they would turn into this bureaucracy around and make you fill it out in triplicate so that they knew that they were doing everything just the way they wanted it done.
exactly right.
And the real key, and believe me, I get these, a few months ago I ran into a guy who was an old friend he was a CPA, so he knew the bookkeeping side of it. And he was trying to sell prepackaged, prepackaged spices, just on the side, at farmers markets, things like that. And he pointed out how the way the rules worked here in Colorado, that he was losing money every time he sold something because of all, what you're talking about there. And it's because we do have such a complicated system. Now, you're probably talking about the sales tax side of it. I don't want us to centralize all of our sales tax collection. We have kind of a combination with the Department of Revenue. For example, I have a sales tax license, and I don't sell much, but I picked it up years ago and never dropped the license. And Larimer County has a couple of sales taxes, but it's tacked on to the state sales tax system, but not every town does that. I know here in Denver, they don't. You know, so you file with Denver, you file with Colorado, and if you're set up in such a way that you're delivering product to other jurisdictions in Colorado, you're supposed to charge sales tax there too and file with them and blah, 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 ad nauseum. Not to mention all of the other taxing systems and registrations. You know, for example, if you are a business in Colorado and you're doing business under any name other than your own personal name, you have to file as a business in Colorado. And then they pass that on to the assessor, and they want to figure out if you've got any personal property tax that needs taxing, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Footnote, my business is Kevin Lundberg. And no, I don't file, I do media production. I don't file with the state, and I'm not obligated to, but that's because we've got this one little wrinkle. But aside from that, they think that your filing with them is they're licensing you to do business. And I don't believe the state of Colorado should have the authority to license individual citizens just because they want to go into some enterprise. Now, I get it if you're a medical doctor that maybe we have to have an extra, oversight to some degree, but I even question how much we do there. Word of warning, I'm probably more libertarian than anybody in the room, even though I'm a Republican, because I really do believe the government should be not in the business of running our own businesses. And far too often, it's like the solicitation, the charitable solicitation thing. I had the Secretary of State's lobbyist in my office here yesterday about this time, and he was saying that if you want to raise money in Colorado as a nonprofit organization, you have to register with the Secretary of State, and he called it licensure, and he said we may remove their license. And I stopped him. That's a registration, not a license. And the distinction is this: the state of Colorado grants you a license if they think you meet their standards. With registration, you simply tell them, I'm in business doing X, Y, or Z. I think the registration is too far and doesn't really satisfy any need. So anyway, I'm sorry, I just ranted too long. No, yeah, I agree with you. Actually, let me give you a real life situation. I ran a bill a few years ago to deregulate small child care facilities, and the line that was drawn was at how many kids you had in the house. Okay, and it was a house situation. And I was doing it partially because that's the reality of what happens. Is childcare is one of the highest costs for childcare in Colorado, and we have a highly regulated system. And if you have I think you're going to have two kids, and that's not considered childcare. But if you have more than that, it is, and you have to go get regulated. And so my bill is to say, okay, how about from 9 or less? Well, of course, the system hated it. Well, let me give you a follow-up, because we had Reggie Bika, the Director of Human Services, who does the regulation on child care, before the committee at JBC was it last week? No, we weren't in session last week. It was, I don't know, it was recently. Anyway, and he said that they are finally coming around to thinking that maybe they should not regulate 4 or fewer kids, unrelated kids, as childcare. He's just pretty much capitulating to the reality that people do it anyway. But let's take this gray market and make it legal. I like it, and I'm very pleased that they're at least looking that far. But you're right. If we went further and said, let the customer, the buyer, be aware, and sure, we'll have this system actually, I don't even want it to be government if possible. And there are a lot of industries that do it this way. There are, certification systems. Here's a good one. Underwriters laboratories for small appliances and the like. That is not a government agency, and it has worked quite well. And there may be some government requirements of the UL stamp is required on something, blah, blah, blah. But it's still not the federal government saying this is what we approve. It's some outside agency saying this is what we approve. And if you as a manufacturer want to get their rating of approval, fantastic. I believe the same thing should be applied. Now I'm understand. I know the political reality. I can't make all this law, but I think that's how it ought to be for the building industry. I don't think you should be required to get codes within a county. I think within a city, it's a different deal because city is kind of this corporate agreement that we're going to live by an extra set of rules that we call the city of blah. But within the county, I believe you should have the option of going through a building department or not. And if it's the not, then understand insurance companies are not going to stand behind you. And other things aren't going to happen, but you as a citizen should be allowed to choose one way or the other. When it comes to the medical industry, that's actually where we are today in the sense that alternative medical practices are huge. They're in Boulder County in particular. There's just a huge number of things you can get in treatment that aren't regulated, and oftentimes that's what somebody needs. Unfortunately, if it's within the regulated side of it, the government is far too often likely to say, no, we won't allow that. People go to other countries to get some treatment because it just isn't within the regulated specs. So yeah, we need to pay more attention to what you're saying and to do more of that. I've got this one little success story with daycare centers, but I'd like to expand it, and I keep pushing that way. You do the same.